Hi, this is Sarah Poff, the multimedia storyteller. I got my dog hat on. Well, it's not the dog hat the dog we're gonna paint, but it is my dog hat. And I got my little artist pin on it. I didn't have a nice fluffy dog to bring and show you, but I did find a bear. I think he might feel just almost as good as that dog. I'm looking forward to painting that whimsical dog with you just real soon here. Stay tuned.
Good to go.
All right. Well, we're going to get started with this painting. I want to talk to you just a few minutes about some of the ways I do things. In case you want to do what I do, of course, always you have your own choice there in your own setting. This is on YouTube, so you can come back to it. So if you watch it or watch part of it, and then you want to go back and think about it, and then bring it to the plate later, you can do that. I use canvas board. This one I called Whimsical Pup Portraits. Don't forget to put your name on there and the date, because who knows, you might become famous. I put it on this side too. All right. And then I just buy the cheap canvas boards. There are others out there that you can do, but that just gives me a lot of space to practice and to not worry about how much that painting is going to cost me. Brushes, I don't pay a lot of attention to what, I do a smaller brush or bigger brush. I know there's round, there's flat. Use what you would like on that, but I don't want anybody not to paint just because they are limited with the brushes they have. Just try it. All right. And then I started using paper plates. So this is a paper plate, and I just punched a hole in the side. You can actually hold it like a paint palette if you'd like to. And let's see, I have a few brushes set out. And I have a little bit of water. I don't use a lot of water in these because we want to do this pretty fast. All right. Now I want to show you what this dog is a little more complicated with his shape than some. Sometimes I know some people will draw. So I drew him. I printed him off. I had to take 2 printings because I don't have a big printer, and I just taped it together. And then I can lay that carbon paper. This is carbon paper. You can still buy it out there, and it might just be a little bit harder to come by than it used to be. The other thing you can do is you can take a graphite lead pencil, and you can shade on the back, and then you're able to trace it onto your canvas. All right, let's see if I can move mine out of the way. So what happens is you always want this blacker side to be facing the canvas if you choose to use that. You could also just lay it on here and trace around and then draw the items that you see there. Either way would work. All right, so since I don't know if you're going to have the carbon, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to trace my shape I printed off on the computer. You could use the same techniques I'm talking about and do a dog. Maybe you have a favorite dog. You could print that off on your printer. Take a picture that you've made of him or her, and you could print that off and then use it as an outline. Now, some people don't like to do this because they're not as sure that, this is the kind of art they want to do. But I know I've read about some of those masters. They did this stuff too. So just telling you what I've learned, they did this stuff too. So now you can see my shape. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I've got my shape on there, so I'm going to go back and do the background. Now I chose to do a really light a wash. I say wash, but you all say wash. So I'm trying to do it the right way for where I live. And so I'm going to take a little bit of brown and yellow. So I have some water here, has some brown and yellow in it. And this is a little bit of blue. I don't want a lot of blue. I'm going to just take a little bit of blue to kind of swirl in there a little bit. And I don't want to mix it up. I want to just swirl it in because I don't want it to be real dark there. And you might try that out on a paper towel. See, like that needs some more water in it, definitely, because I want it to be light. There we go, that's lighter. Now, if you do get it on there and it gets a little too dark, what you can do is you can take your paper towel and you can wipe that back off. Now, I'm going to touch some of that had the blue in it. And I might paint like this here, but then I want to go back and go across because it looks better when I go across. Let's see if I get just a tad, a little bit, a tad. Sometimes I use some of those words I learned as a kid. Okay, so I'm paint, swipe across that a painting. All right, now see, to me that's too dark for what I want that background, so I'm going to get me a paper towel and I'm going to just wipe some of that back out. I can always add more if I want. I can even bring a little bit over into the dog area if I want. But I just don't want it to outshine the dog. I want to bring emphasis to the dog. And when you put the blue in there, yes, you've got to be really careful with it because it will overpower it real quick. So I just try to pull a little bit to the side. Now you could put water on the painting before you start if you want. Sometimes it dries out real quick and sometimes it doesn't, and it pools a little more water on there than I like. So that's why I'd rather just do it this way. Try and see what's best for you. This is about experimentation, trying to get a painting done in about an hour. I was painting with some people in person last week, and I was telling them about some of the things I do after the painting. So after I get finished with the painting, I have a place in my kitchen. Actually, I have a piano in my kitchen. And I just set it on the edge of the piano where the song book would be. And as I come and go, I look at that and I try to decide if I need to add something else. What could I do to make my painting a little better? Using some of the art terms, the rules of art. The center of interest is a big one that is good to follow. This one, because it's more of a portrait, it doesn't have that in what we're doing today. I'd say his eyes would be the most of what that would be. And that would be in the third, that top of that painting there. So I'm just trying to go on the edge and get it all done here. Remember, you can always just stop the video, come back to it later, catch up with wherever I am on this process, because I need to be finishing it in about an hour. Paint, 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 paint. Get enough of that blue that we can see it. So I want enough to see it, but not to make it the dominant piece. So I'm going to see what happens if I wipe back out just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to get a smaller brush, and I'm going to try to, over here in my container, I'm going to try to go where some of that blue is. See if I can pick up some. If it doesn't, which it didn't then, I'm going to put a little blue right there. Sometimes I do it on my hand. I don't want much, and that's way too much. So I want to do some of that. I know, sometimes I use my hands. I know that when I used to teach school and I'd go to lunch, they're like, you have paint on your hands. And I was like, it'll be all right. I'll live. Sometimes I'd go right up to the dot of when I needed to go to the cafeteria because I wanted to help the children get the most out of the time they had with me. Just like I want to let you have the most out of the time that you can. All right, here's our dog. So I don't want to just like solidly paint him because that doesn't give that fluffy part. You know, I just want to go up and pet this dog. You know, pet him on his head and come down, maybe rub his tummy. And so I need to find a stiffer brush. I'm going to look for an older brush in my group. This one right here might work. It's already kind of been, somebody's misused it a little bit. Probably the granddaughters. And then I'm going to come over to my plate and I want to pull a little brown, a little white, and a tad of yellow. Then I'm going to come over, and I came over to my water, this water in here that I mixed up, and I'm going to bring a little bit of that into it. And I'm going to start down in here. Oh, I'm going to add a little more white. And I'm not going to worry about those edges a lot because I'm going to come back in with a smaller brush and it's going to have some brown on it. Now as it lessens with how much paint, then I'm going to keep going. Keep going on it. All right, I'm going to put that one to the side and I'm going to get me another one. I need to check this one because I don't want, see how it's pink there? I don't want it to have pink in it. It looks fine. It looks like it just stained the bristles. So I dampened it just a tad, just a little bit. Okay. Now what I need to do now is I need to come back in here and I need to draw the parts of the dog. I just wanted to get some of it going to kind of, you know, see what it looked like and then to let this part dry. Sometimes if I feel like I have too much, I just pull some of it back out. Just something like that. All right, I'm going to use a brownish, blackish pencil so that hopefully that way you can see it is what I'm hoping for. So I want to draw, he has a prominent tongue. Now I'm going to try to make this line the same. Now you could, if you don't have, like we were talking about the carbon, or you don't, want to do the pencil on the back, you could also cut out the parts. So you could take your paper, if you have a paper like mine, and then you could cut out those different parts and lay them on there. All right, now the next thing I want to add in is I want to add in the nose. So I'm going to bring the nose. It's a triangle and then a rainbow kind of shape underneath. So we're going to do like a triangle like this. And then we're going to curve it down like that. Now, even on the eyes, eyes aren't exactly alike, but if you want it to be, closer and you're concerned about that, draw one, cut it out, and then use it for both of the eyes. I always say the part of the eye that we see is a football shape. It's just kind of a football shape. Now, does that mean the iris? The iris is still round. Now, we don't see the whole thing. And I try really hard to make it really light, which I'm trying to make it a little bit darker than than I would because I want you to be able to see it. So we got the eyes, the nose, and the tongue. And then the dog has that part of his mouth that does like this, his little cheeks. And then he has, and some more like that. This might even come around like more like that. Okay. And then up here, there's a little bit of a line where we have a bunch of his fur. And then we want this to be kind of a point down in here, and then we're going to have some little bit of hair we come out with there. Fur, should we say. And then we're going to do like this. And then there are the ears, and this is his head. All right, now let's get started. I am going to do the white of the eyes first. So I'm going to get me a clean brush. I want a pretty small one. This ought to work. I want a pretty small one this time. And so I'm going to do it like I did this one. I'm going to do it on the sides. And I'm just going to paint like that. Just a little triangle there. Just a little triangle. Okay, and then I'm going to do just a little triangle over here. Okay. Now there'll be some white at the bottom of these circles in his nose, ovals, I should say. I think I'm going to go ahead and just do it a little bit right now, and then I'll probably have to redo that later because I'll probably actually touch it when I'm doing the rest of this. Okay, and then there'll be a dot, but that dot's kind of hard to fill in right now. I guess I could do it, and then, yeah, I'll do it and then see if I can get the black around it. And then I can always come back in with more. I was noticing because I try to watch, I always have something I can learn. I can learn from other artists, and I was looking at somebody who did some of those kind of things the other day, and I was like, maybe I should try some of that. All right, now I want to let's see if I can get this tongue going. And let's see, this needs to come back around like this. All right. So I want a light pink with some brown in it, a little white patch there. So I'm going to use the brush I had for white, and I'm just going to take my pink, pull it to the side. I always pull it to the side because that way I don't use up as much pink. Now I don't want that color. That doesn't look like a tongue color to me. So I'm going to pull this over, and I want to pull just a little bit because I don't want to waste a lot of my paint if I get it wrong. I mean, you can buy these colors. There certainly are those colors out there that you could buy, but I just like to try and see if I can mix them and see if I can get better. All right, now I do feel like I need a little bit, may need a little bit of water. I don't know, I don't think so. I think it's going on there. When you use the craft kind of paints, it does go on smoother. even without the water with it. I just wanted the water for the background because I wanted it to be a wash. Now I'm going to get me another brush that is a little more bristly. And I'm going to bring some of that over. So I kind of like that texture that's coming through. Okay, so sometimes when you're painting, and you're painting something really small like this, it's harder to keep talking. Now, sometimes I do add just a little bit of water, and you know, this has a little bit of brown in it, so this would be easy to add just a little bit of that brown in. Okay, now I've got the edges. I want to get up here, and then I'm going to go with a bigger brush, because remember, we're trying to get this done in about an hour. And there may be some details after that, but in about an hour is what we want. All right. So I'm dry brushing. This doesn't have any paint on it except whatever it's picked up from the canvas. Sometimes when you're with older brushes or cheaper brushes, you'll end up with a hair that comes off, or whatever synthetic material they have for them. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to take that one again, and I want to add a little more brown in it. So I'm going to add a little more brown. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down the center. Now I may end up going down the center again, but I want to get that line in place. And then I want to add a little shading, a little darker pink on each side. And then on mine, what I ended up doing is I ended up using a Sharpie afterwards to give it, that line, a little more definition. So that's always something that you can do. You can use Sharpies, or you can use a colored pencil. Colored pencils work nice on it. Now I want to leave some of this right here for my reflective spot. And sometimes you pick up a little too much brown, and you have to work it out. Let's go back with our dry brush. Okay, and then I want to add a little brown over here, so it gives a little more roundness to it. And you can always do this with, with a brush, if you want to. I just know that sometimes after I've put my paint up, or depending on how my hand's doing, I might not have the fine-tunedness, the fine motor skill to get it done. So I might switch to that marker or that colored pencil. That seems to, might turn it into a mixed medium, but that's okay. I think this would be a fun one for you to be able to get a picture of your own dog and see if you can make that happen. And I don't know if you've read, but I do know that some of the artists actually did some tracing, projecting onto their, whatever their surface was that they were going to paint on. So that's not a new thing. I remember the first time I read that, and I was like, what? What? One of those artists in the late 1800s, he was standing out at some of those iconic spots in London with his little viewfinder kind of thing that he was getting his sketch from. I thought, really? Well, maybe I can do a little bit of that too. Okay, so we got his tongue in. I need to get those darker areas in because they need to dry so I can come back into them. So I need to find me another brush. Go to my trusty, dusty brushes. Well, they're not so dusty. They've been sitting on my shelf. Okay. So now I want brown, but I want a black brown. So I'm going to take and I'm going to add, because the black is the one that is the most intense here, and I'm going to bring it over to the brown. And just switch it there. I want to still see the brown, but I want it to have a little black. I know we used to talk about those kind of colors. We wanted a black brown, like when we would wear clothes. I don't know. I don't hear some of those terms. I need a smaller brush too. I don't hear so many of those terms anymore. Maybe we'll come back to some of that, or maybe somebody in a higher fashion spot knows more about that. Okay, here's one. This will work. Okay, so I don't want it to be as triangle shape as I drew it, but I wanted you to have a shape that you could relate to. This book that I read, that's what she said really helped people. She was an artist, but had no education training. And she was trying to teach her niece about painting. And so she just taught her from the skills that she had and how she knew how to make it work. And it's very interesting. Some of those type of skills are talked about more now than they used to be. Like when I was in college, they weren't talked about. But we talk about guided drawing. It's those kind of things that she talked about. And she talked about how we can conceive that a lot better when we have a shape we're familiar with. And so that's what I did here. I gave you a shape that you were familiar with. I want to make this side a little bit bigger. Okay. Now I want to just fill that in. May have to mix some more black in, because I do want it to be a black brown. Oh, can't you just imagine right now what a dog's nose feels like? Oh man, my grand dog, when I go out to their house, oh man, he is all about it. He's got to touch me with his nose. When I have to run out to their house to pick up something for the grandgirls, sometimes he's, because mom and dad aren't home, we're just going to get something the girls need, and he's waiting. He's waiting for his nose touch and for me to pet his head. I had a dog when I was young, and then the leash laws were put into place in the town I lived in. And we had so much trouble keeping him in the area that we had for him that we ended up letting we gave him to a farmer that we knew. Sometimes you just make a choice. All right, so now we've got his nose. Now what I want to do is I want to paint in the black of the eye next. I like the way this brush is doing, so I'm actually going to just wipe it off. You don't have to always rinse them out because sometimes that takes more time and then the paint gets a little wet on you. So I'm going to try to go around. Let's see, I have actually a little bitty brush here. Let's try to go around that. So I'm trying to think. I went to teach a painting class last weekend, and they were so quiet. A lot of my other classes, people are talking more, but I think when you're trying to paint, and especially in smaller areas, it's harder. And then I thought back, oh, that's right. When I taught school, that's exactly how it happened. I taught elementary art, and it was really hard to get us all set up and everybody to have what they needed. But when they got it, they were quiet, and then cleanup came way too soon. The art classes I taught, you only had 45 minutes. And whereas you probably, as you watch this, you probably thought about it beforehand and looked at what the supplies were, and you already had your supplies on hand. That isn't so when they come into the classroom. I have 45 minutes, and the next class is waiting at the door. So it's a whole different kind of situation there. Now I'm going to take the little brush, and I'm going to go and outline this, but I probably will take a Sharpie when it's dry. You don't want to mix your Sharpies and your acrylic. Do not mix those together till they're dry. You can go over it once it's dry, but you don't want to do it till it's dry. I'm switching back to the other brush. Now I left a lot of white on this one compared to the other one, so I think I'm going to let that dry and then come back, because you know what will happen if I do it right now, I'll end up with gray. And I want it to be black. All right. Now I want to get him some more of that color of his fur coming. So I have my yellow, my white, my brown. So I'm going to go back to this brush. No, I'm not, because you know what? That one has black in it. That brown has black. So we've got to switch this out. So I'm bringing some brown over, bringing white, and a little yellow. And then I'm going to go back to my water that I had fixed for that background, and I'm just going to touch a little bit of this, bring it over. Because I want more color than the background, but I don't want it to be really dark, because I'm trying to make it look like fur. So let's go back to one of these brushes. Make this line just a little bit darker so I don't lose it while I'm painting. So when I do put it on the water, I do want to touch it to me, or I want to touch it to, the paper towel, because I don't want it to be too dark. And on this one, because he has the outline, the fur outline, and the just a little bit short lines there, I don't have to worry as much about if I go out of the line. The color is similar enough that that should be fine. So I want to just keep doing it. Just all over. So I'm doing a stamping kind of motion. I always keep those older brushes around just for that reason, because I want to be able to use them in that kind of way. So I try to keep some of them that are still nice, as in the ends are nice and flat and pointed, but then I need some brushes like this that I can use in the way of making some texture. And there's other ways. I know when you look around, you can find other ways to make texture too. Since my roots are in the classroom, I just always had a little extra brushes around that the kids had used. No matter how much you talk to them about it, they still don't necessarily use them right. So you end up with a lot like this. So I just kind of, here are the brushes. And we would do the best we can. This, I always like showing this one right here. So this is an old one when I taught some classes that the kids didn't use it quite right. And so what it did, because it should be that wide, what I did when those little bristles, would go out, I cut it. So I just cut it and I made a smaller brush. And that seems to work real nice if you're, on a limited budget, or you just don't want to go buy any more. Or maybe you're doing it with some children. I know as I travel around, I encounter people. Someone told me last week that they went back to my video about the bunnies, and they did it with their children. So if you're looking for a seasonal painting, go through Mid-Continent's YouTube channel here and see what you can find, because I've put together a number of videos for them with my nice helpers. And I appreciate that they let me be me on it. Let me talk. You don't have to be precise, because that's just kind of how I am. Just kind of how I am. I'm trying to be careful that I see my lines there. I could go back with my pencil. Okay. I just think he'd be awful fun to just go up and touch. See, when you're finished, just want to go up and touch his fur. All right, I want to spread the paint with this one and then go back to my one I'm dry brushing with. So white, brown, a little yellow, a little water from my tray over here. Okay, I'm going to lay that brush to the side. So this would be a fun one, maybe in the, you could have it out any time of the year, but if you I think about outside and the dogs running up to you and enjoying your company outside. I have a place. I think I have 3 places now that I take my seasonal paintings, and I put them. I'm so glad that we live in a time like this, because when I was young, I remember when I called my dad, and I had run out of money. I was in college, freshman in college, and majoring in art education, and I bought my books. And then I went to the art class, and he says, "And oh, you have to have this too." And my dad said, "What? What are you doing over there?" And supplies, we have supplies that are so much easier to get a hold of and less expensive. It is pleasantly a surprise when I first started going into some of the retail stores we have that carry items. Sometimes there were a couple of them when I taught summer school. They would say, "Now when you come in, don't you just buy all of our stuff without stopping one of us and telling them so we can reorder. We want you to buy, but we need our regular customers to be able to buy too." Now, I did get a little bit too much black. See, that would be probably a good thing to say about this being more of a permanent marker, or I should have used a little bit of smaller brush. So we're going to see if I can get a little brush in there and kind of make some of that a little browner there instead of it being such a bold black. But, I don't worry about things like that because I feel like that's a teaching moment. I don't want you to think you can't bring it to the plate. You can't bring it to the plate and do it. It's about having fun. I was working with a video the other day, and I was talking about that sometimes we leave art behind in elementary school because we want to do some of the music, which is fine. Don't worry about it. I always tell the kids, well, don't worry about it. I understand you want to be social, you want to learn about some of the music, but don't forget, art's still there. Come back to it. Some of those music items you can't do. Maybe if you're in a community, you could join a community activity like that. But you just, you can't have access to that like you can have access to a canvas or other art supplies. And with how many classes and different types of people are painting these days with class instruction, online and in person, there's all kinds of fun to be had. Now, my dog's head's a little squared off. Like I was telling you before, I was trying to give you a shape to go by, so I'm going to pull this up just a little bit. Right there's where my hand would go. Just right between there. Now I'm going to have to be careful with my brush because my dry brush has gotten a little wetter. So I'm going to have to just be a little more careful when I dip it over there and maybe even dry it. All right. Now I'm going to take some of that black brown that I had. Let's see what color that is. And I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to, especially this one right here. You know what? I'm not going to do that right now because it is still wet around it, and if I start in on the other, then this will dry. And maybe this will just look better once I do that. There we go. All right. So I'm going to start in with a small brush doing these strokes with a little bit darker brown, which means I'm going to add some of my black in there. So I'm going to move it around like this, and I'm going to pull some of that paint over here. I'm going to add some more brown because I think it's going to be too black. Plus I got to go all the way around him. We got about 15 minutes left here, I think. Okay. So this one I've used in the pink, but you know the brown black is gonna just hide over that. All right, so what I want to do is just little strokes that get me thinking about the fur. So this should be able to like work it up pretty quick. And I wouldn't put much water in there. I'd just go back and get a little more paint. So you're just kind of doing like an outline, but you're not making it, you don't want it to all go in line because it is his fur. So I made a good choice because this down here is dry. So that'll give this up here a chance to get dry. And we can work with it in a minute. And some dogs have a little bit, you know, like right in here. So I'm just going to start, let's see, this comes out like about like that. We're just going to start going like this. So I did that whole little line there, feathery kind of line with just one dip of the brush because you don't want each stroke to be exactly the same because then it's not as light as what the dog would be. And if you get too much on their paint and you think you can pull some back up, don't rub, but you can do like that, and it'll bring a little bit more of it off. It's always good to have paper towels. Now, if you don't have paper towels with you, though, stop the video and just go get you some. So just putting a little bit of paint. Now, the professor at college always said, stand back, stand back. And I have a little more yellow on his face up here, so we might see if we can work some of that in. All right. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of brown, yellow to the brown here. I want to warm him up a little bit. Give him more of a golden feel. Okay. I'm going to turn it upside down, so I'm turning it upside down so I can get to it better. So I think the hardest thing is to get enough paint without getting too much. Okay, I turned it around. I want to get a little more yellow on this left side. Sometimes you just got to work with it because that's what it takes, just working with it. Okay. I think this is one that you could just like keep going. Oh, well, I need a more. I need a little more here, a little more there. I need a little more. All right, now I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm going to work on the head. Okay. So see, I felt like I made this one too big, so I'm going to take the brown on top of it, and this one, the brown's going to be, is on top of the black here, and the brown's just going to be above. Right now I'm pulling from that tray that I have with a little water on it and some brown, little yellow mixed in. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to come back in here and paint that black. I'm going to turn it back around because this part is drier. So I'm going to paint the black of its nostrils. And I'm going to try to leave a little bit of white at the bottom so that I don't have to paint that white in. If I mess up, I can always go back and paint it, so just remember that. So see, this is that brush I was telling you about that some of the students I've taught in the past had messed up, and I just made it to a smaller one. You know, and I would say as I'm wiping this paint, I'm thinking like, some people may not have or may not remember how to do that. You just keep like working with it and just keep trying, and you'll improve. You'll improve. That's what I want you to know, is that it just takes some practice. Are some people better than others? Yes, it is true. There's a lot of people better than me, but it just takes practice with it. And the more practice you have, it's just like that music and some other things we've talked about. It takes practice. Reading another book, listening to another video, practicing with the actual brush, and not getting so upset with yourself that you don't want to ever do it again. I know I've told on some of the other videos about a time when I walked into somebody's house and they had a painting that didn't even look like them. And I thought, well, my painting from college that I've got behind the dresser looks better than that. I'll tell them, of course, you got to be polite. And so, okay, I'm turning my painting around. And so I went home, got it out from behind there. I didn't have money for a frame. I just put it on the wall. And it stays there till today. It's there till today. It does have a frame now. I think I found a frame at a garage sale. Now see there, I picked up a little black. I didn't get upset at myself about it. I just wiped it off my brush, and I just kept going. That's what you've got to learn to do with some of this. Okay, he has a bunch of like little hairs right here. If you have a dog, what's your dog's name? My dog's name was Pucky. Actually, that black and white hat I have on, kind of in memory of Pucky. I think my mom named him, and I think it's something from Shakespeare. I don't know if you know the answer to that. Hey, maybe just tell me down in some comments. Mother was always coming up with names for things. Sometimes you knew what she was talking about. Sometimes you had to go research and find out what she was talking about. She was a teacher. My granddaughter the other day, I was trying to teach her a little bit of something. She's like, well, I just get tired. You babysit for me, I get tired of you teaching me. And I was like, but I don't know any other way. That's how I grew up. I grew up with parents that were teachers, and we were just always teaching and learning. I mean, that was just our life. Now, I will tell you that there are a number of our friends who came to our house because our parents let us help and do more than some other parents did. But I just was used to it. And she's like, but I don't want to do that, Grandma. I was like, well, you have the skills for it. I'm just trying to help you. I'm just trying to help you. We're about to wind down on this. Looks like I got him a little darker on this side than I have on this. Let's see if I can, with the last few minutes. However, no two dogs are the same, right? See if I can just go back into some of the areas where they're a little whiter. Now, what I want to do with the tongue is, and I'll go through several other areas in here, when it totally dries and I'm ready to come back to it, I'm going to use some colored pencils on it. I made the whites of the eyes a little bit bigger in this one than the other one. Just a personal choice that I made at that moment. All right, we're getting close. Remember some of the things I said? You can always stop this, come back to it, bring some friends, try again. Get a picture of if you have a dog. You could put his name collar there. All right, this is Sarah Poff, and that's a wrap.